Yeah, because it's definitely a thing that if you want somebody to do something in a professional situation, put it in their objectives. Because if their 3 objectives don't contain the thing that you want them to do, they're not going to do it because they're going to get paid on those results, or their bonus is going to depend on that.
Yeah.
And listening to, and as having spent my 4 years or so in the legal world, probably just got about enough information about the legal world to hang myself, But it's this thing about people who are very, very good at being lawyers and extremely good at the law. But then there's the part about being good at business and creating a successful business with law being the product that you sell.
Yes.
Right? And I think it's interesting listening to you because obviously it's something you clocked onto quite quickly. You realize if we develop this process, we can do more matters. That means we make more money, but we're still doing the correct legal process. And it's almost like we don't need to over-engineer the legal process in order to be successful. And we don't need to do it differently every time. We can do it the same every time. We'll have our 4 categories. And then it's almost like you had the same realization, which was, hey, we want to do this training, but it's kind of not fitting within what makes us good lawyers. So therefore, really, nobody's putting any emphasis on it.
So what I did when I created the training program actually was, the question was, what training are people missing to be able to get to the point that they assume responsibility for running this business as a business, but they've only really been exposed to training as a lawyer. And so what I said was, well, I think there's 3 elements to it. Running the business. I think there is the financial management and understanding the law firm as a mathematical machine. And that is something that solicitors would get about half a day learning on the first 3 years that they're qualified. There was something called Management Stage 1 compulsory course, and that was it. So these people that were just not familiar with profit and loss or utilisation or lockup or any of these concepts, and the equity partners were, because they had advisors telling them about it, but the partners were arriving there with no knowledge of it. So that was the first bit. The second bit, you cannot do law without clients. So business development. What skills do we need to have, not just for those partners, but every single person in this organisation? We had 750 people. And if we could all get them talking really confidently about what we do, we suddenly multiply our marketing efforts by 750 people. So I created speed networking sessions, which included support staff, because for me, this program I built started at office junior level in those days, office assistant level. When you come in, what can I tell you about business development? What can I tell you about the numbers and why it matters? And then the third bit was the people, because you're absolutely right. In legal, one of the things we're famous for is having really great lawyers who are never introduced to people management skills. And that is, I think, when I see problems in law, particularly culture problems in law, it is because of the limited people management skills that a lawyer has been able to develop.
And just, I don't want to interrupt your flow, but I asked you about your story, and you're telling me about stuff that's happened some years ago, but this is so completely relevant today still, I believe. Now, there are going to be some law firms that are way ahead of the curve and they really get all this, but I think that probably it's fair to say there are going to be many, many who might be listening to this and thinking, oh, this is interesting. And I'm just going to summarize it. You're basically saying it's about the money, it's about the story you tell, and it's about the relationships you build. And I don't know if you noticed, but the law is not mentioned there.
No.
And that's because in the end, the law is just another product. And you could apply this just as well to selling double glazing.
Absolutely.
And so that's super interesting. Okay, I don't want to interrupt your flow. So you get to QS now, and I think it'd be fair to say you're now able to, because QS, a lot of that was about these things beyond the law, right? In QS,
it was,
and so certainly when we worked together, you were in charge of a lot of that training stuff, but also you're in charge of developing the consultancy for firms around money laundering, about compliance, about how they could also keep on the right side of the law themselves, right?
Yeah. So that's where I cut my teeth as a consultant at QS. I joined QS because of one of my very good friends came to work there. I looked at the model as she was going, and she said, "What do you think about me going to work at this?" And QS like was a completely new experience for the legal sector. Somebody trying to provide to small law firms the caliber of support they could get in big law firms, which, having worked in both, I knew the difference very sharply. And I said to her, "This is a brilliant plan. I love the plan. The problem you've got is everybody had to have the same name. And so one bad apple contaminates the bunch. And so the risk for the business, for the model that you've got, that the investors have just invested in, is if they get bad apples and people start running out of the network because they're worried about the control." I said, "So, who's managing that?" She said, "Nobody." I said, "I would sort that if I were you." And then 9 months later, a job was created. And in fairness, if you ask her, she'll say, "I didn't think you would come because it was a pay drop." But I was like, the mission for me was so important because I train on the high street. Like that first job in Moston, which is not far from us today in Manchester, had, the majority of my work was legally aided work, very economically deprived area, and people who were being taken advantage of by people who could afford lawyers. And people were scared. I always talk about the biker who came in to see me on the free clinic, who had overalls on, greasy hands, everything. "I won't shake your hand, miss," that kind of thing, because it was all a bit grubby, bless him. I said, "How can I help you?" And he said, "Well, I was a bit stupid at the weekend. I was drunk. I was spotted kissing someone. Someone told my wife, and she's kicked me out of the house, and she will not let me see the children." At that point, I had to push the tissues over to him because he was so emotional. He said, "I've never missed a bedtime." And I think his kids were like 6 and 8 or something. And I said, "Don't worry, we're going to fix it." Because that's what people come to lawyers for. So, when small law faces competition from big law and they can't compete, then we lose that on the high street. We lose where real people go to get support. And so when I heard about the QS mission, I was like, this is me all over. This is, I found a path. I am passionate about small law because of their service to society, and the odds are so stacked against them. So when I found money laundering, I'm like, well, this is a real issue for small law. They're expected to have all of these systems and processes, which I built with not an unlimited budget, but a decent budget in a big law firm. And suddenly you're getting all of these compliance obligations while you're trying to service clients, manage people, figure out how to do the money, get new people in. And then someone puts compliance on you. And compliance, if you get it wrong, I mean, in money laundering, you can go to prison. It can be career ending. And I just felt, God, that's not fair.